In a previous video, we saw how to install MySQL. In this video, I want to show you how to connect to that MySQL server from your local computer. This is something you might often do in development when you need to take a look at your remote MySQL database, make some adjustments, or run some scripts on it. You might want to just connect to something locally so you can just easily get an overview of the system. So I'm going to log into the server that we used before, and I'm just showing you the command here because you'll see I'm using identities only, and I'm pointing to a specific SSH key. And this is kind of standard for logging into an AWS server, except you don't always necessarily need the identities only portion, but I do because I have a lot of SSH keys in my .ssh directory, and I need to make sure it uses the specific key. But anyway, I'm logged into the server. And one thing I want to show you off the bat is its default configuration. So we'll go to etc mysql my.conf, and within this file I'll search for the word bind, and we can see the bind address here is the localhost address. So MySQL is only listening on the localhost network. That means I cannot connect to this MySQL instance from a remote computer. So for example, if I was in SQL Pro and I wanted to connect to this server on its standard port, I wouldn't be able to. This is going to give me an error for a few reasons. One, because I might not have the port 3306 open to global connections within AWS's security settings. Another is I might have a firewall on the server. Still another, MySQL is not listening on the remote network. It's only listening on localhost like we just saw. And lastly, MySQL doesn't have a user that's allowed to connect from a remote host. So that's a lot of steps to get through in order to connect to MySQL remotely. And in fact, in a future video, I'm going to show you how to get through all those steps. But right now, specifically, I'm going to show you how to get past those issues in the easiest way possible. So what I'm going to do is create a SSH tunnel. What I can do is use SSH to forward a local port on my localhost network on my local computer over SSH and to a different port inside of the AWS server that's running MySQL. So what's the command for that? Well, before we use this to log in, and then we just connected to Ubuntu at this IP address, and this let me SSH in. On top of this, I'm just going to go back here. I'm going to use the $L flag, and this is going to tell SSH to port forward. So I'm going to forward localhost port 3333 to localhost 3306. So let me explain what this is doing. My local computer, localhost port 3333, is going to be forwarded to the server, so that's this server, to that server's localhost network port 3306, which is where MySQL is listening for connections. So I'll do this, and this is actually going to log me in, but I'm also port forwarding on my local computer. So now we're going to go to SQL Pro, and I'll change this to 3333, and I'm going to do 127.0.0.1. So this is going to connect to my local computer's localhost at port 3333. That is going to use the SSH connection and forward that over port 22 on SSH to localhost on this server's port 3306 where MySQL is listening. And we can see that it connected, and we can just see I don't have any databases made, but I do have the default MySQL database in here, and we can see the users and all that kind of stuff. So over here on my server, let's actually log in with root and password root. I'm going to create a database. This is a test. Show databases. Great, and we can see it's here. So let's see that over here. I'm going to go to refresh databases, and we'll see this is a test, is now listed as a new database here. So I've successfully connected locally to a remote server, bypassing firewall issues, bypassing AWS's extra security, bypassing the fact that MySQL is listening specifically only on localhost port 3306 on that remote server. And this is still a secure way to connect because we're using it over SSH, which is both secure and is using SSH keys to encrypt traffic.